Well, hey gang, Old Blue Accord here again, and today we're going to talk about negative camber in the front end of the car. So again, it's a 1988 Honda Accord. As y'all know, this car I've been usually working on. Got some other cars to work on too, but of course. And yeah, so this is about getting negative camber in your car for performance applications. Now, I'm sure there's going to be a debate about your camber and negative and all that stuff, but if you want a car to handle good and be a little more sporty, you want negative camber. And that goes from anything from your junky ass lawnmower to your pickup truck to your Corvette to your whatever sports car you have. Negative camber is your friend. So we're going to start off with my setup, and I'm also going to go through, there's a few options. Obviously the car's not adjustable from the factory. If you look at this picture drawing, there's no adjustment on this arm for camber, and that's kind of important because when you take it for your alignment or whatever, they're going to tell you, if they look at the book, there's no possible way they can adjust it. And they're right, that's true. There's no adjustment. Now, one of the options you had is the Prelude cars. Now, the Prelude cars, this is a picture of the 84 to 87, and also the next generation, I believe that's a 92. Yeah, 88 to 91. Yeah, to 92, I believe. They had a slot in the top, and what you're doing with that slot is you're moving the ball joint back and forth, and that's adjusting your camber. So towards the body is negative, towards the outside of the car is positive. And again, you always want negative. You never want positive, no matter what anybody tells you. Problem with this setup is, well, it's not really a problem, is you can't get the arms anymore. So if they're available, this wouldn't be a bad deal, but they're not available. And I've actually looked for one for about a year because I wanted to do this video, and it just wasn't able to find one. So that's probably the problem with that. And the other question I've always had is, the guys that have run these arms before, is what's it do to your overall Honda Accord suspension? Because our Accord obviously isn't designed for that. It has the fixed arm. So are the distances the same? Obviously it bolts up, or they claim they do. I think you have to put a bunch of washers in on one side. So this distance across the studs isn't the same. And that, that's fine. That's part of modifying your car. But I've always asked that question on the forums, and nobody's ever given me a straight answer. So this is the way I do it. And what you're doing is you're buying a kit, TRW, and it's they usually sell it in this single box. Now there's a couple other brands, Moog and somebody else that sells this exact same thing. And what you're doing is taking your stock stud on this arm and changing it for one of these. And what it is the hole is offset. So if you open one of these up, I'm going to open this one up. And this one says 1 degree. It comes with instructions and all that good stuff. But when you open this up and look at it, the hole is off center. It's not dead in the middle like this one is. So you're changing this point where the stud goes up into the body by offsetting the hole. Kind of tricky, kind of cool. They're labeled, 1 degree. Follow the instructions. I actually think you're supposed to use just one, and I actually use 2. I don't know if that's right or not, but that's how I've done it. And best part of what I like about this setup is when your regular bolt goes through, it fits pretty snug in there, and that you want that. You don't want a real loose. I found this as an example. This is a sleeve on a bolt. You don't want this. This is kind of loose. I don't know if you can hear that, or see it, but you can see there's no interference fit. It's maybe 10 thousandths. Yeah, you can see it wiggling there. So we don't want that in your suspension. You don't want any kind of weird movement, slop, if you can avoid it. So this little stud deal, it works pretty good. So this is the stock setup, and this is what I wanted to, pretty much show. This is a totally box stock arm with the normal Honda Accord stud. And it just looks like this, and you're just replacing it with that. And again, follow the instructions. The instructions tell you to replace, I believe they tell you to replace the front, going towards the front of the car. I actually do both. Now that's debatable how much camber negative camber you gain by doing that. But again, you want this arm towards the car, inside towards the car closer. You don't want it out this way, out against the car. You want it in towards the car, and that's going to give you negative camber. And I'll show you that with I've got a little mock setup to do here. But as you can see, this was my first alignment, and that was a long time ago, 2006. And I got about what looks like about -1 on each side, pretty balanced. And I have much caster in there. I've always wanted to change the caster a little bit, but I haven't done that. And I had a second alignment. This one's probably, 6 years later. And you can see it held pretty good. Now, obviously, the caster's a little bit different. And that's kind of an important thing when you do an alignment is try to always remember when you take the car off the alignment rack and put it back on, these numbers are going to move just a little bit because there's a lot of things going on. This is just a static setup, and with your suspension movement and everything like that, you're going to have some slightly different numbers. So, but I definitely have negative camber in the car. So, and actually with the two together, I probably have more camber. And I'll tell you, I'm going to get the alignment checked again. So, that being said, we're going to go on to I'm going to try to just demonstrate this just a little bit different because it might be confusing to people. So, if you look at the book, again, this is your arm. You want the top, this ball joint going towards the inside of the car for negative camber. And that is going to pull the top of the ball joint, this top of the ball joint in. And that's going to give you more camber. So if you look at your wheel hub, it's going to go in. So you want to think in towards the car, more camber. Now it's obviously way exaggerated, but if you're dead straight here, that's 0. This is going to be negative, and that's what you want for performance. Now I have done a few other things to this. This is my stock arm, but I have actually added like a solid bushing. Like I said, I put both studs on, and again, this moves this part of the arm towards the car, so eventually you run out of room where this actually hits. And you can see I've actually knocked the paint off right there. And on this stud, I'm trying to get the alignment so you all can see it. If you can look at this stud, you can see I had to grind just a little bit off to make it work. So that tells me right there you shouldn't use 2. But the reason why I used 2 is I wanted more camber than what I had. Right? Okay. And you can kind of see how the hole is offset. So I hope that explains it pretty well. I don't know, it can be confusing, maybe, but the big thing is this is really the only way to get negative camber in the front end of your car. And negative camber, yeah, you can see the difference there. Negative camber is what you want for performance. So I'll do a little talk about my solid bushings and some other stuff in here. This is something I've worked on probably a long time. I'm never 100% happy with how my setup works, so I still have some play. It's hard to see it, but there's some play here, and I've never quite, especially on that one, I've never quite completely got that out. So, and these have been on here quite a while. I took a picture and put it on the forums, I think about 6 years ago. So these have been on the car 6 years, and obviously the bushing or the boot is bad, and that's what got me started. I'm going to take this off and put the boot on. I might as well do check everything out, because whenever you modify your suspension, you need to be checking all this stuff all the time, because this isn't a factory setup. So anything can happen. You're going to have to take responsibility for your own modifications, and that's mine. So yeah, I've always been happy with the setup. I just noticed when I took the tire off on the car that the it's cut a little bit on the inside. Now it could be I've got some worn suspension parts, but I think what I'm going to do is definitely planning to get a new set of tires, but I'm definitely going to get it aligned, because I haven't got the alignment checked in a long time. I'm happy with how the car handles, but I want to see where I'm at as far as alignment and what I have done, because when I put these double correctors on, I never really did recheck it. So obviously I had about one and a half, and I was shooting for 2, and I think I maybe overshot it a little bit. Now this is a wishbone suspension, right, on a Honda. Again, there's the picture. This bent arm is part of the wishbone, suspension. So you see that, you're dealing with a double wishbone suspension. They have camber curve built in, so as the tires as you compress and go into a corner and the car compresses, the camber goes negative anyway. So you really don't need a whole lot of negative camber to start with. Now, performance-wise, a little bit helps you with the flexion of the suspension, but a McPherson strut car, you need a lot of camber, and in this case, this is a good suspension. You don't need that much. So I think 2 is a pretty good compromise. Now there is an adjustment for the rear, and I'll probably go through that someday. It's an adjustable arm on the top that gives you some negative, and I run some negative in the rear. If you look at my rear numbers, I'm running about -2 in the back also, which I like. It gives the car some stability. But definitely want to try to maybe go with a little more caster. I'm kind of always thought that was a little bit low. And again, that is adjustable on these cars by this, what they call the, I guess it's the strut rod or torque rod that goes from the suspension to the front of the car with these bushings. That is adjustable. So you can pull the lower control arm towards the front of the car and get more caster. Now it affects your toe, and you have to have it, you obviously have to have your toe corrected and everything like that. But I'm gonna have a hot shot suspension guy do me a little hot shot alignment, and then I'll give you some numbers back. But that's where we're at. And like I said, I've had this set up, well, since 06, obviously, when I did it, and I had it a little bit before that, but I actually got those, I just found those 2 alignment sheets, so kind of happy with how it worked out. And it's always done good for me as far as the tire wear and stuff. Just now I noticed that this one tire, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over here so we can look at it, but I just noticed the inside of the tire has got some funky wear. It's kind of hard to see. I'm going to try. You can almost see the, yeah. So I'm just going to do this on the fly. You can see on the inside there that there's not much tread mark, where you can see a good mark. You can see a good mark right here. So that tells me it's wearing a little more on the inside. It's kind of hard to tell with the camera. Got good, here my tread bars are good, so I got plenty of tread. But yeah, you can kind of tell, and it's got a feathered feel to it, where it's been rubbing a little bit. So almost like to, and I know it's flat spotted this tire. In fact, I think that might be the flat spot. So had a brake lock up, so not good on my tire. Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and start the fresh set of tires, fresh alignment, and we're going to go from there. And I'm kind of curious to see what happens. I'm going to put it back together stock. I'm going to obviously change that boot real quick. Just put it back together again. I feel like the joint is in good shape. It's greasable. I put the grease fitting on it. And, you know, from there, we'll see what happens. And, yeah, I'll report back. But that's really all I've got to talk about with the front suspension, though, today. Like I said, there's really not many options. You either got to buy a kit, and I think they really only sell, they don't sell that whole box anymore. I think they just sell like a single. So, and then I usually get the 1 degree. I would definitely recommend getting the 1 degree deals and go from there. Now there is one other suspension company called SPC, and I had one for a while and I used it, and it had the same kind of idea. It was an offset stud like that came down, and then you had a box with the holes offset, but it was just like a piece of flat steel. It wasn't even the thickness of this pen, and the problem with that was the bolt wore through the hole pretty quick, and it got very loose within like a year. And again, it was SPC company, and they make a lot of suspension correction parts, they call them. And sometimes you'll see SPC part labeled as a TRW or a Moog, because I think they all sell to each other. So you'll buy a Moog and it'll be an SPC, a mirror copy. But yeah, I used the hole for negative camber, and I noticed that I could hear this arm rattling around in the car every time I hit a bump, and I pulled it all apart, and the bolt had worn through this hole and it just totally enlarged it. So the fit was just terrible. And then all the little bushings in between that are kind of important, because this has to move, you want this movement, where they just put some little cheap rubber washers there, and they had all chewed up. It just was not a good setup. SPC, I can't recommend it. This is the setup you want on your stock. So if you put this on, you put that on your stock arm right here, you're going to be in good shape. It's going to float nice. It's going to fit good. I don't think you're going to have any real problems. So I definitely recommend this kit over anything else. So take that for what it's will, and I appreciate y'all looking. And when I get it aligned and new tires, I'll report back my findings. I've got a feeling I got a lot more negative camber than I think I do. So appreciate it. Thank you. Old Blue Accord over and out.